Hello, my card slinging cuties. Welcome back to my channel. OMG, it's been so long since I did an episode of Vibing With. I'm so sorry. I've been all over the place. There was so much to do. There was so much book launch stuff, and then there was so much live speaking stuff, and it just went on and on. But you don't want my excuses. You want to come back to our card learning journey. So welcome to Vibing with the Chariot. That is the next card that we're going to go on an exploration with, and I'm so excited to be able to do that. But just before we get started, just so you know, every single episode of Vibing With is sponsored by yours truly. I am indeed a full-time professional card slinger. So if you want to hop over to my online store and have a look at the incredible collection of reading options that I have for you over there, please feel welcome. I have got readings for love, work, money, health, spirituality, and so many other things besides. I'm very inventive when it comes to creating spreads. And you can also just pick up a custom design. So if you don't like any of the templates, I can make something completely unique to you and your needs. So don't be shy, come and be a client. And if you're returning to me, you know I always love to see those familiar faces. And I hope you can all appreciate, by the way, I know that I try to do a little something with my outfit with every card to try and kind of match the energy of the card. I did not know what the hell to do for the Chariot, but after a while I was thinking, have I got anything that looks like some kind of armor? Maybe. And eventually this is what I came up with, okay? A slinky party dress and my harness. So I'm kind of pleased with how this turned out, you know? I'm not gonna lie. Don't say I don't do anything for you. Okay, let's get into it. The opening thoughts, and then we're going to go into light and shadow aspects of the card. We're going to deep dive, so grab your notebook if you know that you are probably going to get something out of this, and let's explore this incredible card in the Major Arcana. So it's basically a tradition, my darlings, that every single time I introduce the card, I select it from a different deck that I own. And this time I've chosen Tarot Muka. I know a lot of you love this deck. And this is the Chariot card from Tarot Muka. And you can see here, it's a very chill charioteer, not really going anywhere too quickly. And the Sphinxes are absolutely lounging, like they are just basically chilling out. It doesn't look like they're about to hit the road anytime soon. So it's quite an interesting one, really. It's very zen, very serene. And I do like that visual interpretation. So the Chariot card really tends to be very unproblematic. I know there are some cards that I've shown you so far where I've basically immediately said, look, they're problematic cards. Very often people don't enjoy them. Very often tarot students get stuck with them because they have a negative connotation. The Chariot is not such a card. Most people feel positively about the Chariot because it's so much to do with adventure and momentum and exploration and curiosity. And I must admit that I really love the Chariot card. Definitely I want to go into the lighter or the more conscious or accepted aspects, and then the shadowy or the darker, more difficult aspects, because I think it's very important to get that full spectrum and that full color with every single card. But just really on site, thinking about what I know of the Chariot from being a pro reader, the Chariot is favored. The Chariot is loved. We love this guy. We love what he stands for. He's really about that like sovereign quest, that really determined mission. And it often reminds us of the best of ourselves, you know, when we are at our most disciplined and focused and really going after what we want. And so there does tend to be mostly a positive vibe with the Chariot. One thing I do find as someone who teaches tarot is that very often the Chariot is a card that is pigeonholed into one thing, you know? It can be quite difficult to see the nuances and the complexities of the Chariot, because really we're watching this charioteer. We see this strong, well-dressed charioteer, you know, with the usually Sphinxes, but sometimes it's horses and sometimes it's cats, depending on the deck. But we see there the animals that are helping him pull his chariot along, and we kind of get that strong sense that like this is a guy on a mission, he's on his way somewhere. And so it's really about being purposeful and focused. And so because of that very strong imagery and the name of the card, sometimes it's really hard for people to go outside the box. And so one of the things that I'm going to try and help you with today is to be able to do that and get that more sense of the depth of the card and what else is on offer there with the Chariot. By the way, my darlings, just a very quick note, if you can see my makeup running running, it is because it is indeed running. And I don't know why, because it's not hot outside or anything, but I've got a leaky eye on this side. I don't know what's going on this side. So if my face is on my dress by the end of the episode, I will just call it dedication to the cause, because I've started now and I am not stopping. I want this episode to go out. I know so many of you that enjoy watching the Vibing with Tarot series have been waiting. So without further ado, let's get on with it. Okay, we're going to do the light first, then the shadow. You know the drill. The Chariot is a very, very exciting card because it's really about quest. It's about mission. It's about making a decision with yourself that you're going to go on an adventure. You're going to go in search of something that you want, and you're really going to forge out your life path according to your own ideals and your own vision. And it's quite exciting because after all of the talk of like harmony and alignment and compromise and flowing with each other that came up in the Lovers card, the Chariot looks really rather independent, you know, single-minded, singularly focused, and really being able to lean into his will and what he most wants to do and where he most wants to go. So the Chariot often asks you to think about, what is it that you want? What is your sense of mission? What kind of purpose do you want to give yourself? Something that you want to go after, that you really, really want to experience. And it's an adventure, you know? And yes, it is a test of your power and it's a test of your daring, but it's also something that can be mightily fun and incredibly exciting. So the Chariot definitely first and foremost is about quest. It's about mission. It's about knowing that you want to go forward and do the thing, and you make that agreement with yourself. You make that commitment. And in a way, when you make that commitment, you have to trust in the journey that you're about to take. You have to believe in yourself, and you also have to have kind of faith, you know, when it comes to the elements of the journey that you can't control. You have to have optimism. You have to have that feeling that, like, it's okay for me to do this. I have permission to do this, and it's my sovereign choice. It's my pathway, and whatever is within my control, I'm going to be steadfastly in control of. I'm going to take responsibility of those aspects, and whatever is outside of my control, like the weather or people I might meet along the way, you know, little things that might come up. Maybe I need to change a wheel. Maybe one of my sphinxes is ill and I need to deal with that. I have the faith to know and the strength to know that I can deal with that. So there's definitely a bravery in the vision that the charioteer has to have. If the charioteer sat at home before he was getting ready to take off and he was like, oh my God, what could go wrong? This could go wrong, that could go wrong, and it's all going to get out of hand. I'm not going to be able to deal with it. The charioteer would never leave home, and therefore we wouldn't have this card. So there was a mindset that the charioteer had to get into before he went out on his grand adventure. And that mindset was around two things. I'm strong enough to do this. I trust myself. I believe in myself. And two, I have faith in my ability to take on the unforeseen, to know that sometimes there will be things that I can't control, but I'm just going to have to go with it because I want this mission. I want whatever it is that will be achieved or experienced along the way and at the finish line also. So it's a very, very powerful card about mindset, and it's a powerful card about the urge towards adventure, the urge towards ambition, and going forward in that direction. The Chariot is not always about literal travel, although it can be, but very often the Chariot is just about making your way towards something. So it's about metaphorical journey, essentially. And whatever journey you're going on, there's going to be a lot of ambition, determination, focus, discipline involved, you know? So the charioteer does have to be strong. The charioteer does have to face what comes up as the result of any exciting adventure. There are going to be setbacks. There are going to be frustrations. There are going to be weirdnesses. So the Chariot has to be really connected to the faith he has in himself, and also really connected to the faith that he has that whatever happens on the adventure was meant to happen, and he will meet it as it comes. He will cross those bridges when he comes to them, and he will be able to make something happen, you know, fix something up, go forward. So there's a lot of self-belief there as well. But yes, plenty of determination, plenty of excitement, plenty of ambition, and a searing vision for what he wants this quest to be. This card very often represents the part of us that has to have our wits about us, you know. We've really got to be adaptable. We've got to be flexible. We've got to go with whatever comes next. We don't have all the creature comforts of home. We don't have the usual people that we can rely on or fall back on. We maybe won't have expert advice when we need it. We're going to have to think on our feet and think about what it is that we have to do if some obstacle arises or some misfortune befalls us. So there's also very much this sense that you've got to rely on what you know internally. And if you don't know something, it's guesswork, and it's really just that bravery to be able to try something you might not have tried before. The Chariot has got a lot to do with our sense of independent thought and our willingness to assert our will and our sense of what our life is supposed to look like. Traditionally, the Chariot card is thought of as the leaving home card. So everything that happens before the Chariot kind of happens on the home turf, you know. The Fool is kind of like being born. You've got the Magician, where you get hold of your tools, you know. The Emperor and Empress are mum and dad. Hierophant, you know, like all of those things. Basically, they're things that seem to be happening closer to home. There seems to be that sense that those are rites of passage that happen in quick succession to each other, and they seem to be kind of like more normative, I guess you could say. The Chariot is traditionally the card of leaving home. That's where you pack your bags, you decide where you're going. You're not going to have all of that familial help or kind of like familiarity around you, and that's part of the joy of it. That's part of the adventure, is knowing that like, oh wow, now it's my time to decide what I want to do, and it's my time to decide what happens next. That doesn't mean that you're only going to get this card if you've literally just left home and you're not under your parents' jurisdiction anymore. It's psycho-spiritual, right? The meaning is psycho-spiritual. It's any time that we feel like we are leaving the more familiar pastures where everything is set up as we wanted it to be, or everything is familiar to us, and instead we are moving into that sense of very empowered quest, whereby we might encounter things we hadn't encountered, and we're going to really like be strong and be sort of quick-witted in the face of that. So that is all very exciting. It can also be a little bit intimidating, but I think if we can really believe in ourselves and the part within us that has that charioteer at the helm, then it is a very awesome card to receive, especially at a time where you really are thinking, maybe I do want to change at work, maybe I do want to get promoted or do some training, or maybe I want to start working out, maybe I want to start really thinking about my 5-year plan. The Chariot is a great card to get for these kinds of things, because it's really putting you face to face with that independent thought and that will and determination that you have to have to make those decisions and then take those actions to get the quest started and keep it moving. The Chariot often represents the part of us that is willing to assert our will in order to maintain momentum. Even though the Chariot is stagnant in this card, and actually in a lot of the decks, the Chariot doesn't seem to be super fast moving in a lot of decks. The Chariot really is about embracing that desire for momentum. And so it's kind of really honoring the power of onward journey and that incredible sensation that you get when things are moving, things are happening, you're putting yourself in different situations and you're responding to what happens. Imagine literally being a charioteer going through town after town that you've never encountered before. There's different food, maybe different languages, there's different situations going on politically, there's things that might sort of come at you out of nowhere, and you've got to deal with that stuff as you go along because you are a lone adventurer. Whatever you might have happening in your life that feels very much like that, the Chariot is basically a mirror being held up to you, showing you that you actually are on that quest and you are insistent upon momentum forward, and you're insistent upon being able to count on yourself to survive and to thrive, to have a good time, and to really be wary of anything that you need to be wary of as well, because every traveler needs to be wary of things that might not be quite what they seem. And so your intuition's got to be there too, your strength and your willingness not to give up. I don't think you can be very lazy when you're a charioteer, you know, so you really need to be in that sense of discipline. One thing that is very often interesting about the Chariot card is that the charioteer himself never really appears to have any reins on the animals that are helping him to pull his chariot forward. And the idea with that is that actually he's controlling the animals through strength of will. It's like a very magician-like thing in a way. It's that sense that the Chariot is also working with these other powers, these higher forms of guidance and direction, and that not everything is what it seems. Not everything is totally kind of like man-made and controlled by material factors. There's also that added something, that je ne sais quoi that comes from the esoteric influence. And this is something that I learned at a certain point from books. I kept reading it. I was like, you know, reading books that said, look at the charioteer. He's not even even control of his animals, he's not even really moving. It's almost all symbolic. And I really like that idea that like the charioteer has access to these other things that guide him and allow him to make the quest safely and successfully. So it might also be a good time for you to think about not only what do you want, what are you prepared to give to the quest, what are you prepared to leave behind in order to have this grand adventure, but also what other systems of navigation are you using? Are you tapping into your magic? Are you tapping into your meditation? Are you tapping into guidance from your ancestors or gods? What makes you feel as though you're not alone when you're going on your journey and that you are actually attended by incredible mystical medicine and guidance that will see you through to the other side? And of course, with the charioteer, there's always this desire for the accomplishment of the finishing line. Momentum isn't just momentum for momentum's sake. It's to get you somewhere. And that is really the big deal. That is really the big achievement. And so any guidance that the charioteer can use to get them to that point is definitely not something to be negated. It's not something to be ignored there, I think that the charioteer is relying on both material and metaphysical components of assistance to get him through. And so it's really about thinking, how does that apply in your life? So yes, it's about ambition, focus. It's about your sovereign idea of what you want your life to be, what you want the project to be, what you want, the whatever it is you're going through in your life, what you want it to be, what you want it to look like. But it's also about witnessing, where am I pulling in my various forms of assistance and guidance so that I can make this quest successful and end up at the finish line. The chariot is a very action-oriented part of us. It's the part of us that is willing to do something, to put things into motion in order to get what we want. So there is that discipline there, and there's that energy there. When the chariot comes up in a reading, it's energy, it's potency, it's making things happen. It's making those moves on the chessboard of life to get where you want to go. And so there is a sacrifice of things like laziness and indecision, and kind of like pessimism, I guess, because in your charioteer phase of life, you can't afford to be dealing with those things. You need to really feel that you're on your A game, you're with yourself, you trust yourself, and you keep believing in the mission that you have in mind. This card is therefore very good for people that do have a really heightened sense of ambition with their creative output or with their career path or whatever it might be, even with their mental health or their physical well-being. If you feel that you want to be supercharged and heightened in your sense of ambition, you want to have your eye on the fucking prize, you want to have the eye of the tiger. The chariot is a really good, exciting card to come up to kind of show you how capable you are of holding that kind of energy and that kind of attitude along the way. Whenever I get the chariot card, I very often think about how I need to withstand some of the less sort of like easy stuff, in order to get to what I ultimately want in terms of victory. So whatever might feel like it's really difficult to do or it's hard to be consistent with, I'm kind of feeling like I want to slink away and not take that responsibility. The chariot card really reminds me to keep going. The chariot card was actually a really powerful one for me when I was writing my second book, Witch in Darkness. I would look at that card and think, okay, you know what, this is hard. This is something where I've really got to tough it out at times, but it's also beautiful because it's the pathway towards the ultimate goal. It's a sense of mission that I can keep embracing and keep returning to. And that kind of like lit my engine again and got me feeling really excited about what I was doing. So, it's hard being the charioteer sometimes, in the sense that you've got to keep going and you've got to like withstand a lot of the difficult effort you've got to put in. But the charioteer is always reorienting towards the dream of the mission and the love of the mission. And that is what keeps everything going smoothly. Okay, my darlings, it's that time again. We're going to have to go into the more difficult, shadowy, complex, inconvenient side of the chariot's nature. Every single card has this side, and the chariot is no different. The first thing I'm going to say is probably not going to be that surprising to you. If the chariot is a card that is all about forward motion, quest, focus, vision, perseverance, what is one thing that you think the chariot is not going to enjoy? Anything that waylays them, anything that stops them from going where they want to go, anybody else that they might need to consider, any problem that arises that takes them off of their A game. They're not going to like compromising. They're not going to like, negotiating on any kind of vision. And they might get particularly irritable if anything holds them back from that very strong-headed vision they have of what needs to happen. So there can be a kind of arrogance there with the Chariot energy, and there can be very much a sense of like my way or the highway, the quest over everything, the quest over people, over relationships, over anything like that. And that's where we get into that shadow. I also think that the charioteer can forget sometimes that there are those external variables that will slow things down, mess things up, bring in surprises. I read a interpretation of this card in a book a very long time ago. I'm sorry, I can't remember who wrote it. It might have been Kim Huggins. I think it was Kim Huggins. But yeah, basically, I read an interpretation of the Chariot once years ago, and it said that the charioteer must never forget that there are actually creatures helping him to pull his chariot along. And very often, if he's in the shadow side of his nature, he might forget that. He might forget that he actually needs to take care of those animals, pay attention to them and when they need to rest, and appreciate them for the very vital role that they're playing in propelling him forward. He also needs to appreciate his chariot. He needs to appreciate good weather. He needs to appreciate food. He needs to appreciate everything that is also getting him where he needs to go. And sometimes the charioteer can like to think of themselves as somebody that is absolutely independent and making everything happen alone. And anything that comes in that makes him have to take his eye off that and focus on other things, that would be a problem for a figure like the charioteer. The other thing, aside from being very sort of like steadfast in your point of view as the Chariot card, is also that it might be very difficult for you to accept when you need to rest and you need to kind of like slow down and pull back and not be so focused on the vision and on the momentum forward. The other thing is the charioteer can sometimes get lost. And when you get lost, when you are not where you need to be, when you've not navigated correctly, you can kind of respond to that in two ways, right? You can melt down, get angry and see it as a massive setback, or you can say, I'm lost. This is kind of interesting. It's not really getting me further to the goal, but it's actually something that I could explore. It's something that could be quite sumptuous. So a shadow charioteer is that part of us that is like, no, I don't want anything getting in the way of this. It is an inconvenience. It is not fair. And I'm going to be very, very stroppy and sulky about it. But if we can lift that charioteer side of us out of those kinds of impulses, then instead we can say, you know what? It's okay if it's a slow day. It's okay if things came to pass that I wasn't expecting. I'm going to take it in stride. I'm just going to have some deep breaths and I'm going to enjoy whatever this experience is giving me. So it's really a choice that you have to make. And I think the shadowy side of our nature is the side where our sheer ambition takes over and makes us actually quite selfish. We might talk over other people's needs. We might feel very resentful of anything or anyone that holds us back from the mission. We become unhealthily married to the mission and it makes us difficult to be around, So if you know that there's ever been a point in your life where your sheer ambition and your desire for the quest made you a bit difficult to be around and made you somebody that was not grateful and that was not going with the flow, then the shadow of the Chariot card, that is something that you have lived. Your inner charioteer might be the part of you that wants to be the boss, the part of you that wants to really have complete authority over the situation, over the journey, over every step of everything. And it will be really difficult for you to accept that sometimes external variables take precedence. Sometimes other people's needs take precedence over yours. Sometimes we just need to accept that we've been waylaid, that we don't get to stick to a really rigid time frame and a really rigid way of doing things, because that's not really how life works, So we have to put down our shadow charioteer tendency to resent anything that is taking us away from what we feel is most important and what we most want to do. So it's really the urge against selfishness, I think. Whenever we see the Chariot card in shadow, very often it's really that urge against against wanting everything our way. And we really have to sit with that and think, have I been trying to domineer over this entire situation? Have I only been thinking about what would make me pleased or what I think happens to be right? Because I do think the charioteer can just run straight over other people's needs or other people's points of view in order to really get that single-minded, crystal clear vision achieved. And actually, for some people, that might be something to admire, but like, come on, for most of us, it's something that feels really pig-headed, really unpleasant. We don't like being around people like that, and we do not want to be people like that. So sometimes the Chariot card comes along as a little bit of a warning. Slow down, take in the scenery. It doesn't always have to be about the end point. It can be about the experience and the enjoyment of the quest itself. One thing that I've always been trying to explain to you through this Vibing With series is that sometimes the card's shadow is just the polar opposite of the card's sort of light or conscious or pleasant or acceptable side, okay? So with the Chariot, we see that some of the most amazing qualities of this card are based around momentum, discipline, strength, forward motion, you know, that sort of like focus on the goal. What is the polar opposite of that? It's sluggishness, it's indecisiveness, it's unwillingness to take action to go after our goal. It's that urge towards self-sabotage sometimes. It's that urge towards toxic comparison that makes us look at other people and what they're doing with their chariot and how they're getting on, and then just thinking, you know what, like, they're smashing it, I'm not going to be able to do it the way they do. It's pessimism, it's apathy, it's feeling sorry for yourself. Oh, bit tough loving there, but like, that's basically how it is. Sometimes when the Chariot comes through for me, it is in kind of a tough loving position, which is showing me what I'm not bringing to the table. And so I think it would be really irresponsible of me not to mention that sometimes when the Chariot comes in, it's because you need to get the fuck up and get something done. It is because you're not believing in your own inner charioteer, okay? You have one inside of you, and you can reorient yourself back to the goal and start taking steps. But sometimes the Chariot visits you at such a time where you are not doing that, and you really need to have a mirror held up to the part of you inside that can do that can persevere, and that can be steadfast in the face of challenges because you believe in the goal, because you believe in the mission. And sometimes when the Chariot turns up in a difficult position in your reading, it can sometimes just be asking you, is your quest the same quest it was before? Do you want the things you wanted in the first place? Do you need to stop and just check whether or not you're going to the location that you still desire to go to? And sometimes the ego finds it really hard to let go of the original quest, because that's what we said we wanted. That's what we said we were going after. That's what we envisioned for ourselves, for the win that we were going to bring into our life. But you know what? The charioteer has options to change their mind, to go in other directions, you know, to explore other things. So sometimes it's just the case that a personal evolution has meant that you are no longer in the charioteer mode that you thought you were. You might have thought you wanted those things, but now it's time to sort of like pull over and figure out, wait a minute, am I still taking this chariot to Damascus with these sphinxes, or am I, you know, selling the sphinxes at auction and like walking the other way and like doing something different and joining a traveling band? Like, what do I want to do? Am I still the same kind of charioteer that I was before? Because sometimes when we've lost that energy of steadfast pursuit of the goal, it is because the goal itself is not something that we want to steadfastly pursue. And we just need to be honest with ourselves about that. Another really big time shadow of the Chariot is that feeling that you've lost control of your life, right? Like, you don't know where the Chariot is going anymore. You don't know whether or not you still have a right to call yourself a charioteer. You don't have all of those positive things that the card is known for, like that sense of quest, that sense of, you know, I'm a sharpshooter, I'm going after that mission. If you don't have that, if you're at a time in your life where that feels a little bit like blancmange, and you're not really sure what you want or how you're going to get there, then the Chariot can become a very intimidating card, a card that you do not like to really see. And at that point, you have an incredible option to do some deep shadow work around that. I think sometimes we feel bereft of our inner Chariot energy because we don't know how we would use it. We do not know really what the quest is supposed to be. And I'm not sitting here saying, oh, you need a quest, you've got to figure it out. If you get the card in a shadow position, it means that you need to know what you're doing. But sometimes it's just an opportunity to sit with the fear that we feel and the disappointment that we feel that we don't have that great quest right now. We're not really sure where it's all going, and we don't really know how to apply our passion and inspiration and show ourselves what we're really made of, because sometimes you can't. Sometimes you just have to acknowledge that you're not on a chariot and that you're not presently going on a quest. And that can be really difficult. A big, fat, juicy question that the chariot can ask us sometimes is, are you on your chariot? Is this what you want to do? And this is something that I talk about a lot in my work, actually, is really that sense of like, are you doing what you authentically want to do? Is it making you happy? Is it making you shine in the brightest way that you can? Or have you hopped on a chariot and started making your way towards a certain direction because it's what your parents wanted for you? It's what you think you should do. It's what you wanted 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You know, it's something that you wish would represent you. And so you keep kind of like forging forward, but actually your heart is not in it. You know, you just no longer feel that this quest has got anything to give you at heart level. So there's a real sort of like head to head between you and you that needs to happen sometimes when the chariot comes up, because one of the shadows of it can be the pursuit of something for reasons other than your heart's desire. It can be the pursuit of something for reasons that you feel would fix some kind of former brokenness, or make somebody proud of you who's never proud of you, or, you know, live up to a certain area of society, or portray yourself to have a certain status. But really, when it comes down to it, when you really listen to yourself, you think to yourself, I'm getting off this chariot. I don't want this. This is not my mission. And it's actually not something that I truly embrace. It's not something that's authentic to me. So the happiest kind of charioteer is always one that is doing something that is truly authentic. The quest is actually from the heart level. There might be ego about it. There might be, you know, status shit going on there. But ultimately, the charioteer is happy because they want what it is they're going after. So sometimes this card is asking you to consider if you feel the same way about what you are pursuing right now. And if not, it's completely okay to take some time out, pull the chariot over to the side of the road and think about it. It's not, you know, an instant sign that you need to drop what you've been doing, but it's definitely a gentle invitation to stop going forward with momentum, stop pursuing the thing, and just like pull over, reassess, have some deep soul searching, give yourself a hug, and think about what you want the next move to be, because your chariot can go anywhere. It's not on tracks, you know, it's not being forced to go in a specific direction. Sometimes you just need to have the bravery to say, I'm turning my chariot around, or I'm setting my chariot on fire. I'm going to run off with the Sphinxes, okay? I'm just going to be totally psychedelic about it. This amazing, high-powered, inspiring card is very, very versatile. Depending on where it comes up in a reading, there's going to be so much for you to unpack, my darlings. And as I've gone through these reflections on the chariot, I noticed that I'm feeling very energized, and I'm feeling into some of those deeper layers of the chariot that really make us explore ourselves in more depth. And I have to say that even though the chariot seems like a very powerful, very like happy-go-lucky, yeah, momentum, winning, quest type of card, there are so many other layers in there, aren't there, for us to explore. So get at me below in the comments. Let me know, what did you think about this exploration of the chariot? Give me your thoughts and feels. How have you always felt about the chariot? And have your feelings changed over the course of time? I know that for me, I think my feelings about the chariot have always remained pretty normal, you know, pretty, not normal, but like, you know, steadfast. They're pretty the same. They're not super changeable. But I do find that the chariot has come through to ask me some big questions, and definitely to push me over a few finish lines. It really depends on the spread position in which the chariot comes up. So yeah, let me know, what is your mood about the chariot? I would be really eager to find out. Don't forget to go over to my website and check out my readings if you would like something one-on-one, and I will be back with strength next time. So that's going to be a very exciting exploration. Please don't forget to recommend this series to anybody in your life who wants to learn how to read tarot tarot, or just get a few different ideas, or just kind of like sit with card meanings in a more considered way. I hope you've done some scribbling while you've been watching. And if you're rewatching, hello, thank you for rewatching. That's very sweet. I know some of you go through and watch and then rewatch with journal notes, and I find that so heartwarming. You cannot imagine how grateful I am for you taking an interest in this series. Oh, and by the way, between you and me, my vibing with people, my next book is going to be a tarot book, and I just wrote the entire chapter outline for it the other night. In the middle of the night, okay? It just came to me in the middle of the night. I was like, I'm going to write a tarot book. And the chapter outline is pretty done. I wouldn't say it's totally done, every single chapter where it needs to be, but it's looking pretty together. I've sent it to my editor to see if she feels like it might be something viable that I could write. So for any of you who have ever asked me to write a tarot book, it's coming. It's coming. Okay, much love until next time, my darlings. Keep card slinging and blessed be. Mwah.